Hey, hello! Welcome to All Christians Fellowship. We are a caring and equipping church influencing the world with God's love. It's great to have you here. This is the 5th video of the series on the Gospel of John. And today we finish the first chapter of this Gospel. So we will see that Nazareth may be understood not only as a specific village in northern Israel in Jesus' time, no, but also as a choice in our daily lives. But first, let's take a look at the story. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." And Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than that." He then added, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." Have you ever read the story about Jacob in the Old Testament? It is in Genesis chapters 25, 26, 27, and 28. If you have, you will remember that Jacob was a schemer and a twister. He's always portrayed as someone who is looking for the best way to take advantage of people or situations, especially if it meant deceiving his older twin Esau. You will see that even the story of how they were born included a telling detail. He had been holding on to his brother's heel, trying to trip him up even in the womb. And the Bible says that the habit stuck. He tricked Esau out of his birthright and out of his father's blessing too. And eventually the tables turned and Esau tried to kill him. It was time for Jacob to live in a hurry. And then when Jacob was running away with not a dollar to his name and nothing but the clothes on his back, he had a dream. He saw a ladder with its feet on the ground and it stopped reaching to heaven. God's angels were going up and down on it. The Lord himself stood beside him and promised him that he would bring him back to his land in peace and in prosperity. This story is well known by all Jews. Jesus refers to it to explain to Nathanael that he and the other disciples will see heaven opened, with the angels of God going up and down upon the Son of Man. Now, people usually think that biblical scholars can easily find all the answers to all the mysteries in the Bible, right? Well, let me be honest with you, that's not true. We do not know many things, although of course we are able to explain many mysteries by understanding the biblical cultural context. But in the case of this passage, Jesus offers a very strange picture actually. To begin with, it is hard to see what Nathanael and the others might have made of it, what John thinks we should make of it, and indeed what Jesus might have meant by it. But it is obviously important since it concludes the first chapter, right? A chapter in which so many of the Gospel's great themes have been introduced, as we have seen in the other videos. And here's the thing, Jacob's dream with the ladder taught him about God's presence. And that is why Jacob called the place Beth-el, that is, the house of God, God's house. Jacob came back to the land and his descendants were established there. So Bethel became one of the great sanctuaries of Israel, where early Israelite worship was carried on. The tradition of Jacob's dream angels going up and down on the ladder would then be connected with the belief that when you worshipped God in his house, God was really present, with his angels linking heaven and earth. And this is probably the clue John is describing here. Because from the last 4 stories we have heard, we already know that a great deal of John's gospel has to do with 2 important lessons. First, the way in which Jesus fulfills the promises concerning the temple. And second, how Jesus goes beyond those promises, pioneering the new way the living God will be present with his people. Now, verse 14 says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." In Greek, the word for dwelling or living is literally tabernacling or pitching a tent. Now, why is this so important for us? Because the thought of a tent in which God lived would remind John's original readers of the tabernacle in the wilderness at the time of the Exodus, and from there to the temple in Jerusalem where God's presence was promised. And aware of this context, then, Jesus is actually saying something like this: "Do not think that all you will see is 1 or 2 remarkable acts of insight, such as you witnessed when I showed you that I knew about you before you even appeared. What you will see from now on is the reality towards which Jacob's ladder, and even the temple itself, was pointing like a signpost. If you follow me, Nathanael, you will see what it looks like when heaven and earth are open to each other. You won't necessarily see the angels themselves, but you will see things happening which show that they are there." Okay, and why is this so impactful? Well, Nathanael comes from Cana. We find that information in the last chapter of the Gospel. And he refuses to believe that anything good would come out of the village of Nazareth. And that is because Cana and Nazareth were rival villages, located a short distance up the hill. Just a small cryptic comment from Jesus is suddenly Nathanael not only believes something good may come out of Nazareth, he gives Jesus the exalted title of Son of God. And Jesus seems as surprised and amused as we are in reading this account. Of course, Nathanael uses Son of God as a messianic title connected to King of Israel, which immediately follows it. But we know now that John is teaching us that it means more than this, because something much more significant than a mere Messiah is here. When you are with Jesus, it is as though you are in the house of God, in the temple itself, with God's angels coming and going. God's own presence is there beside you. That promise, of course, remains as true today as it was then. And that is why, as John explains much later in chapter 20, he is writing this book. Okay, this is the literal biblical theological interpretation of this story. However, how can we apply this story to our lives today? There is here a detail that cannot go unnoticed. Every time we read or hear this story, we likely think about certain people we have met in life. We wonder what they feel. We wonder what they think about themselves and about us. When we think of them, we ask ourselves, can anything good come out of them? They probably ask a similar question about us, and these people can be identified as our Nazareths. I have my Nazareth. You have yours. And they are people, they are places, they are situations that we had no right to judge or question or label, but did. And sometimes we still do. We wonder about the ways we belittle or demeaned or rejected the Nazareths in our lives, right? We may realize we lost more by their absence than they would have gained by our presence. We wonder how many times we have missed the Messiah's presence simply because we refuse to look toward Nazareth. Who or what are your Nazareths? Recall their names. Picture their faces. What was or is your relationship with them like? We all have our Nazareth. They are the objects of our judgments, our assumptions, our labeling, and sometimes even our exclusion. People, places, and situations from which we neither expect nor see the possibility of anything good coming. Certainly nothing useful or beneficial to us, right? Nazareth, in other words, is about how we see and how we relate to others. Nathanael's question is not unique to him. It gets asked every day. And that is because his question actually is not about Nazareth, right? It is about himself. That is true for all of us, whoever or wherever our Nazareth may be. That question says more about us than it does about Nazareth. It is about our belief and unbelief in others, ourselves, and even God. It is about our biases, prejudices, and fears. It is about our wounds and losses and sorrows. It is about our guilt and shame. It is about the assumptions and judgments we make. It is about all the many filters through which we see the world, we see others, we see ourselves, we see even God. Somehow we become convinced that we know what Nazareth is like, and we are sure there is no way anything good, let alone the Holy One, God, the Messiah, Jesus, could come from there. But what if that is precisely how it is? What if God reveals himself through the one who is different, the other, the stranger? What if God comes to us as one who has no economic value, for instance? Who is powerless and has no place to lay her or his head? For us, Nazareth may be a blind spot and a hardening of our hearts. For God, however, Nazareth is a place of epiphany. There is a place where he appears, a place where he invites people to see, to believe, and love in new ways. Isn't that what happened to Nathanael? He didn't declare Jesus to be the Son of God and the King of Israel because Nazareth had changed. No, it was because he had changed. He became willing to get up and leave where he was. He let go of one belief to hold a new belief. He walked away from the fig tree of his assumptions to consider something new. He left behind his certitudes to give attention to something different, foreign and unexpected. Nathanael accepted the same invitation to come and see which we talked about last week. He was willing to reconsider and look again. What he saw simply did not fit his assumptions or the judgments he had made. I think you understand, right? Nazareth is more real than you think. But because it is so ordinary, we just don't see it. We miss it. We close our eyes and we turn away. However, there is always this invitation to come and see, trying to move us to a new place where we risk the unknown, to allow ourselves to be surprised by God. That's right. And as happened with Nathanael, the choice is always before us. It is before us when we see the face of another, when we hear the news or read the headlines, when we encounter the stranger and the one who is different, when we look out on the world from beneath our own fig tree. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? John makes it clear that nobody can answer that question for you. You cannot answer it for me, no. Philip could not answer for Nathanael, and interestingly, neither could Jesus. If we really want to know the answer about our Nazareth, we must each get up and see for ourselves. Nathanael did it. It changed his life forever. And that is why we still read the Gospel of John today. And that is why we are every day invited to come and see. Well, it's time to see and follow the light. It's time to enjoy God's grace. So all the best to you and your family. Thank you for watching this video. Be in peace. Bye now.